I wanted to leave you with some things that you could think about as you kind of exit the summit and you talk about how you can implement this in your life. But I wanted to first start with a little bit of a story. And like any good insurance story, it starts with love. So Paris, 1992, actually it was Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but stick with me for a little bit. I had just come out of undergraduate. I joined a company called Andersen Consulting that eventually became Accenture. And I went to this amazing place called Penn National Insurance. I showed up, as a political scientist by background, knew nothing about insurance. Actually, the last question that was asked to me in my interview for Andersen Consulting was, we work with computers here. You're okay with that? And I said, yeah, I guess so. That sounds good. So I showed up on the project, and two things happened. The first thing that happened was I looked across the project room. I saw this woman, and I said to my friend, I'm going to marry that girl, and you're going to be invited to the wedding. And I did, and I still am married to her today. The story is, the way my wife tells it is a lot less interesting than that, but clearly that was a love affair that has endured. The second thing that happened was, I wouldn't say I fell in love with insurance. Maybe it's more like deep affection and admiration. But I started on a journey to really try to understand this industry. I was always fascinated by how decisions got made, how companies could actually change to be more successful, how departments could work together to get better every day and to learn. So fast forward through that journey, I spent almost half of my career at Accenture outside the US, working with insurance companies, brokerages of all shapes and sizes, just really trying to understand what made the industry tick and then how it could eventually evolve. Then I got a real job as a COO at an insurance company, and I learned very quickly that stuff was a lot different than the way that the PowerPoint slide made it look. I got an appreciation for what month-end close was. I figured out how difficult the midterm endorsement was, and how you deploy technology in the real world as opposed to selling a project. But throughout that journey, I kind of oversimplified for myself what insurance was all about. I really looked at it as and again, my professors from Swarthmore would be really upset with the way I describe it because it's one giant, long run-on sentence. Insurance, it's capital placed against risk in the forms of products and related services sold to customers through channels by companies to generate a return. But everything about that sentence, every major word about that sentence is changing. So when we think about it, we now have different forms of capital that have come into the industry, risks that we didn't even think that were insurable, we actually make a lot of money from. Products are changing every day. The services that go along with those in terms of things that are embedded, telematics, whatever happens to be. Our customer base is changing. The channels that we're dealing with are shifting pretty radically. I think that in the time that I've got to slide 2, that there have been 5 new MGAs that have shown up since we started talking. And the companies that are operating are quite different. And last but not least, the bar that's set for companies to actually be profitable and successful is actually being raised very significantly. And no offense to my friend Barry, who talked yesterday about the insurance industry and the fiduciary nature of it all and the fact that we got to protect profitability. But from 1978 to 2004, the U.S. commercial insurance industry generated exactly $0 of underwriting profit. So that's an industry that is challenged in general to create return based on the basis of its core operations. So when I look at this, the question that I ask myself is, how do we react to all of this change? And I would say that the objects in the mirror are in fact a lot closer than they appear. And we're talking here about capturing the shift and trying to kind of work our way through it. I'll just digress for a second. Hopefully maybe there's some liberal arts nerds or some physics nerds in the audience that have read this book. There's a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. It was by somebody named Thomas Kuhn. Raise your hand if you read it. If you've read it, you probably fell asleep when you read it. I'll give you the TLDR on it. It kind of went like this. Science is governed by a framework. Scientists follow a specific framework around discovery and furthering of that science. In application of that framework, anomalies arise. Things that they didn't expect to happen were happening. As those anomalies accumulate, they accumulate faster, they create a crisis around that science, and then eventually a new method, a new paradigm, the paradigm shift occurs. And it's not gradual. It's actually very abrupt. And I think that that's exactly what we're facing when we look at the business that we operate in. I mean, think about it this way. We used to look at E&S as the kind of the escape valve, and then things would eventually come back to retail. E&S is what, 15% of the world that we live in. It's not going to slow down, right? So the admitted market is challenged there. Private equity used to kind of work around the fringes, but now they're behind a lot of the consolidation that we see. It's just things like that that are pretty undeniable. And I haven't even started to talk about the role of technology. The way I would say it is, you've got all of these factors that are converging, you've got a time scale that's shrinking, and then the question for us in the room is, what do we do about it? And I think, as a reformed consultant, I see, the kabuki theater of innovation and disruption that gets pushed on you guys every day. There's a demo that you see, there's a pitch that you read, there's doom scrolling that you have on your phones about where and how the world is changing. But I think you're in a unique position to actually separate the signal from the noise. Why do I say that? I say it quite simply because the best place to forge the agency, the brokerage, or the insurance company of the future is exactly in what you do every day. You are the heartbeat, you're in the operations, you see the transactions, you understand the criticality of getting things right, and you know the price of getting them wrong. It's not being dictated down towards you to say, go and do this. You're feeling it from your customers, you're feeling it from the business units that you're interacting with, you're feeling it from all the stakeholders that are around you. So I believe that you have the actual ability to really separate the signal from the noise as we look at kind of charting the way forward. I also feel that it's actually not that hard when you think about how you can move this ball forward. And I'll just leave you with, kind of a few things here that you can think about. The first one is, I believe you need to lock in on the what. I'm a technology optimist, but I'm an insurance pragmatist. And we cannot defy the physics of the math that governs our business of what's successful. We can't, pull a lemonade and then declare that we have more developers than underwriters and, pretend that, the magic will all of a sudden happen. We can't create community-adjusted EBITDA like WeWork did. There is a way that you generate an underwriting profit. There's a way that you make an agency or brokerage successful, and we need to keep that always in the frame. So lock in on the what. And for us, that what isn't, I'm now going to magically, quintuple the size of the company. It's what's within the domain of the work that you have. Can you improve service quality? Can you have better retention? Can you actually motivate and drive the workforce in the right direction? So really keeping the what in front of you is going to be absolutely critical to define where the future is going to go. The second thing is to reimagine the how. And, the part I left out about my wife, she's a change management professional. So every day she reminds me, not just, that I forgot to take out the trash, but, how organizations evolve over time. And if you think about a way that an organization is structured, it's based off hierarchical excellence. There's somebody who leads it, there's different divisions, there's leaders of the divisions, there's a manager, there's a supervisor, it's a hierarchical excellence that's kind of built down. The difference now is we have a very different way that we can configure ourselves to be successful. You should think of ReSource Pro as distributed work, right? So you can now change the team composition where we would do something, you would do something else, and that's the new workforce that you could be putting together. It might be flatter, it might be global, it could be virtual, as we saw when we looked at some of the views on where the technology could go. But you need to abandon this view that we've always done it that way. I heard that, I think, in 26 different languages when I spent all of that time abroad. And I completely understand the defense that's around that, but for us, there is finally the ability to reimagine the how, because some of the things that we have available to us can actually help us get there in a very practical, in a very real way. And what I would say to yourself is, when you look in the mirror in the morning, be the signal keeper. What does that mean? You're the lighthouse that can actually see the way out of this, potentially what feels like an overwhelming and a very turbulent and a very competitive environment. You can keep what's important in focus, in line, and then when solutions come around, they will actually be much more impactful. I said to my operations team a million years ago, at CNA, the path to the big things runs through the little things. And the little things need to compound on top of each other that'll eventually create big change. And it's not about waiting for the tipping point, it's about the starting point. And I really want to impress upon you, you are in the catbird seat in this center stage moment. This is the time of the operator, because the solutions will fail, the strategies will never work unless they come from you. So again, be wildly confident in your role going forward. Be incredibly provocative about how you deal with the folks around you. Beat up those consultants when they show up and try to tell you what you should do. Be skeptical of the technology that shows up at your doorstep, because nobody knows the heartbeat of what you're trying to accomplish better than what you guys do. I couldn't be more excited to be on this journey with you. I was a ReSource Pro customer myself. I'd like to think that I was a bit, somewhat demanding, but a good customer. I couldn't be happier to be on this journey with you. And the last thing I'll leave you with, if you've got the courage and you have the conviction and you have the vision and you just execute, that the winners will not be hard to find. And I'm sure that they'll all be in this room. Thank you very much.